I'm on the record. Candy, you ready? Okay. The zoning hearing board has had an opportunity to briefly review and discuss the three motions that have been presented by the township. The zoning hearing board is inclined to request that Range provide a written response to each of the motions. It would be the preference of the zoning hearing board to postpone tonight's hearing until the November 9th hearing, to provide the Range a 15-day period from today's hearing to provide a written response to each of the three motions, and then the zoning hearing board will consider those motions at the November 9th meeting. The only concern that the zoning hearing board has with doing that is there is the time frames that the zoning hearing board has to act within when there are pending applications. A decision has to be made within 45 days unless the parties will consent to extend the time frame. If any of the motions would be granted on November 9th, that 45-day time frame does not become an issue. If all three of the motions are not granted, I don't know how the zoning hearing board would be able to render a decision within 45 days after November 9th, because we will have voluminous testimony, I would expect, that night, and it may even proceed beyond that night, depending upon how long the presentations are. So with that kind of, as a summary of a preliminary approach, I'd like to get an understanding initially from Range. One, if you're comfortable with that approach and willing to provide written responses and to agree tonight to extend the time frame for the zoning hearing board to render a decision.
Well, let's make sure we take those in individual pieces. As the first question, if I could have that one.
The first question is, are you willing to provide written responses? Do you wish to provide written responses to the three motions that we've all seen for the first time tonight?
Well, it's a threshold matter, and as I mentioned at the outset of my remarks or in initial response, the township had full ability to have raised these issues well in advance of tonight's proceeding, had full opportunity to have presented this to the zoning hearing board, to its solicitor, and to opposing counsel well in advance of this proceeding, and deliberately chose not to. It is certainly, I will state that it is certainly a tactic that is used by those who are opposed to gas drilling to delay. That delay works in favor of those opposed to gas drilling, and that would be the net effect of what we're being asked to do. That having been said, certainly we would appreciate further opportunity to respond to the motions and briefs that were just presented for the first time to everyone this evening. Again, because the rhetoric was certainly loud enough for all of us, some of this was anticipated, and some or all of it is already addressed in the bench briefs that have been provided to the board and to opposing counsel. We believe that the proceedings could go further and go forward this evening with a ruling to occur at a later point in time, and that would be our preference and our recommendation to the board. With all that said, we would defer and, in respect to the board, agree to extend the deadline.
Okay. Mr. Kamen, do you have anything you want to say in regard to the comments that I've made?
The only thing I would add to clarify the record, I'm not going to deal with what Mr. Kamarowski said, but just direct my comments to you, Mr. Reedy. I believe that the Township Code prescribes that the hearing, the applicant shall have completed the presentation of this case within 100 days of opening it. And then we would have, approximately 100 days to respond. I don't think we're going anywhere near that, but the 45-day period would run from the close of testimony, is my understanding under the Township Code.
If the parties agree to extend the periods for testimony, is my understanding.
I would just put an objection on the record that we certainly don't have a problem with continuing this to the November meeting.
Not an issue on either side, so probably
Correct.
nothing to banter about that. Okay, any other comments? The public will have an opportunity to comment at the next meeting at the conclusion of the presentation of both cases. So you're not being denied that opportunity tonight, but there are a lot of legal matters tonight that have been presented and need to be addressed, and it does not make sense to waste everybody's time on multiple nights of testimony until those are addressed. So with that having been said, it may be appropriate for some type of a motion.
Mr. Reed, just one other point. I know you gave range 15 days to respond. Could we have a brief period of time, maybe 5 days thereafter, to respond with any rebuttal that's maybe required?
I prefer not to, or I would ask you not to be redundant in what you've offered. You presented 3 voluminous documents. I'm asking Range to reply to it. I believe you've probably done a very thorough job, Mr. Kamen, and I'm not so sure it will give us enough time to receive those, distribute them to all of the board members, and digest what you have to say. I don't want to deny you the opportunity to make a full and complete record on this. So what I would ask is not to have any redundant argument in your reply, and to try to limit it to a page or 2 if possible.
We can certainly do that. It would only be rebuttal, it wouldn't be rehash.
That way there won't be any allegation of the record not being full by both parties.
Yeah, that's fine, again, so long as it doesn't delay the decision.
As long as it's under a couple pages, that won't delay it.
Do I have a motion from the board to postpone this hearing to the November 9th meeting? All in favor? Do I have a motion on the board to adjourn the meeting for this evening?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
See you November 9th.
Mr. Kamarowski,